Striking workers don't benefit from strikes.
Well, tell that to the millions of workers who have won better pay, better terms and better conditions because of their willingness to stand shoulder to shoulder and take strike action.
Strikes do not help striking workers.
Remember, it's the fundamental democratic right to strike and the willingness of workers to take industrial action which has underpinned the ability of millions to win dignity in the workplace and earn a decent standard of living. Without our trade unions and the workers willing to back them with strike action when needed, we wouldn't have a minimum wage, maternity and paternity rights, pension provision, holiday and sickness entitlements, victories which have benefited every single person in this country. No wonder the Tories hate strikes so much.
I'm sorry, but it's a myth that strikes are helpful. They're not.
Well, perhaps not to the government, which is why the Prime Minister is trying to railroad through a new anti-strike bill which will rob millions of workers of their democratic right to withdraw their labour, force them to work against their will and allow them to be sacked if they refuse. It's unthinkable, unworkable and almost certainly illegal. And it's no coincidence the government is doing this at the very moment workers across the country are standing together and saying enough is enough to the biggest drop in living standards since records began. Enough is enough to a decade of soaring food banks, poverty and wage stagnation under successive Conservative governments.
If their union demands are met with an inflationary pay rise, they lose because that equates to about £1,000 extra in tax per household.
It's just complete bollocks, completely untrue, and the Prime Minister himself is shamelessly using the same figure.
What I'm not going to do is ask ordinary families up and down the country to pay an extra £1,000 a year.
He's also sending out more hapless ministers to repeat it.
You know, if we accepted all of the pay demands, I think it's £28 billion that taxpayers would have to pay.
This is an important point, Laura. If we applied this across the board, that would cost families £1,000 each.
It costs every household just short of £1,000.
An extra £1,000 per household.
There are about 28 million households in the UK, and the government is telling the public a real terms pay rise for public sector workers will cost every one of them an extra £1,000. It's economically illiterate and completely untrue. The Prime Minister knows it, and so do all the government ministers now shamelessly repeating it. It assumes all 28 million UK households would make exactly the same contribution in tax, but some households don't pay income tax, and the amount of tax paid varies from household to household, with the best off paying more. And any pay rise for public sector workers will itself be taxable, and that tax is included within the 28 billion which goes straight back to the government.